that Black Saturday of December 1929, in which Tupua Tamasese was one of those who suffered mortal injuries. And I identified the banishment of Samoan leaders from their country and the stripping of chiefly titles, some of which were never regained. All those events impacted on the life of Taisi Nelson. The loss of close family in the flu pandemic, the loss of friends and colleagues in the Black Saturday massacre, and banishment from Samoa. Patricia O'Brien has done a remarkable job of bringing out the background to and the context of these events. And I learned a lot more from reading this book, and I was very moved by it. The book documents the arrogance, the offensiveness, and the racism of the colonial New Zealand authorities in Samoa. I read the book as a New Zealander really with a great sense of shame. The apology which I offered to the people of Samoa 15 years ago on behalf of the New Zealand government had its critics then and now. But having read this new and very detailed account of the injustices, I am left more convinced than ever that it was the right thing to do. To me, the most remarkable attribute of Taisi Nelson was his commitment at all times to peaceful protest and to using all the mechanisms available to him under law to press the cause of Samoan independence and of his own freedom and that of others. And he continued that stance even when it was clear that New Zealand and global systems were stacked against him. He pursued his case through legal means in the New Zealand courts, at the Privy Council in London, and at the League of Nations in Geneva. He patiently wrote for years a series of letters to New Zealand Prime Ministers, ministers and officials seeking justice. He used the power of his voice through the paper which he founded, which operated out of New Zealand, to promote the case for independence and justice for Samoa. The New Zealand judiciary was not inclined to rule in favour of Taisi and against the New Zealand government. And Taisi could not achieve justice in our courts. What I found also very shocking was the disgraceful treatment meted out to Taisi at the League of Nations, where he took a petition but was unable to make oral representations on it. Yet the colonial administrator was given full voice at that partial body, the Permanent Mandates Commission, which then ruled against the Samoan petitioners. Taisi Nelson was subjected to exile, imprisonment, slander, and efforts to ruin his business. So the book does not make happy reading. He was a man of considerable means and status in Samoa, and that made him all the more threatening to a colonial government which was determined to perpetrate its rule. Those public figures outside Samoa who emerged with some credit in this sorry tale were Harry Holland, MP, in his capacity as Leader of the Opposition, Sir Maui Pomari, in particular, a government minister, who both befriended and defended Taisi Nelson. There was Stafford Cripps in the United Kingdom and H.V. Evatt in Australia, both prominent lawyers who then became very prominent politicians. Sadly, the treatment to which Taisi and others advocating justice and independence for Samoa was subjected has many parallels in other countries which were subjected to colonial rule. And Patricia O'Brien very helpfully places this story in its global context. And I think the story of Taisi Nelson and the Mao need to be much more widely known. It's always important that the truth comes out. Without question, I think there is a very powerful film which could be based on this book. Indeed, reading it, I was often reminded of that very searing story which is told in a relatively recent film called A United Kingdom, which some of you may have seen. And it's about the extraordinary story of how the British colonial authorities tried to stop the marriage of the King of Botswana to an Englishwoman in the late 1940s. And having failed to stop it, refused to allow him to go home to Botswana, as they were concerned to avoid upsetting South Africa, where the enforcement of apartheid was underway. So reading this troubling book evokes many such reflections for me. Samoa today is a proud, independent nation. As it celebrates its independence each year, it is so important that the contribution of those who laid down their lives and those many others who were subjected to brutal and arbitrary treatment is remembered. Today's youth stand on the shoulders of those giants. I'm most grateful to be able to offer these few reflections on what is a very important book. It highlights an era of New Zealand behaviour towards Samoa which is shameful and which must never be forgotten. Taisi Nelson was a brave man, he was a man of conviction, and he was a man fully deserving of our admiration for his dedication to the cause of freedom, justice and peace for Samoa. Whawhatai.